Mexico has approved a controversial bill which opens up state-controlled oil deposits to foreign investors, this for the first time in 75 years. The law will ultimately allow foreign companies to explore for oil and extract it alongside the state-owned giant Pemex and actually end up pocketing an awful lot of the profits. And the country has known reserves of more than 10 billion barrels, making it the third biggest oil producer in Latin America. But 30 billion more are believed to lie under the Gulf of Mexico, which the government cannot afford to develop. So global energy giants are queuing up to offer the technology needed to get at the reserves. But the country's opposition says the president is simply capitulating in the face of American pressure. RT's correspondent Nicholas Sanchez O'Donovan reports.
Although we have to say it was one of the most chaotic moments ever seen in the history of Mexican politics. Outside the barricaded building, hundreds of protesters rallied against the reform, and inside, the picture wasn't really so much different. Now the PRD and the Morena movement, both left-wing movements, have called for a massive rally on Sunday. Regarding the content of the reform, well, it basically means that the government is now allowed to give private companies contracts and licenses to explore and drill the oil and gas in Mexico, deals that until now, well, obviously were prohibited under Mexico's constitution. Opponents to the reform say they fear that big corporations, especially from the US, will have complete domination over Mexico's natural resources. And the truth is that it can be a very big deal, actually, for the US. We can't forget that Mexico remains one of the top 5 crude exporters to their northern neighbours, shipping over 1 million barrels a day. This energy reform also modifies 3 points of the Mexican constitution. Therefore, it now has to be approved by a minimum of 17 local governments. This step is really only a formality, and groups on the left think that the measure is so big that it should have been subjected to a national referendum.
And energy analyst Alex Corrons believes that all the advantages of Mexico's sovereignty over its own resources are now just being pawned off for free.
We are seeing natural resources being stolen by businessmen with the government's help. We see high-flying politicians provide companies with all the legal assistance they can, so the companies end up owning resources that should be controlled by the state. Businesses even get control over employees' rights, and it's clear that these rights will then be violated. These proposals are then put before Congress, which passes them, while some of the most unpopular measures get included as reforms at a later date. I can't imagine that any of these lawmakers then go on to work for oil companies after their mandate expires. That's what is happening with the system, where the public sector sets up the private sector. The state starts to sell off bit by bit, especially now in times of crisis, and they sell it all cheap.